that good food, we should be all set. So I'm going to start this off with a brief story. So, with our friends on St. Patrick's Day, there's a luncheon here at the Relief's Inn. And so I'm sitting at the table with Eileen Burnell and her parents, Frank and Margaret O'Connor, fantastic Irish people, and they are always inviting me. And I sat with, I think Kate Riley was at our table that day. But next to me was a school committee woman by Donna Bertolino. And halfway through the luncheon, she turns to me and she says, "Why don't you people do something like this?" I said, "You people? My gosh." And you know something? She was right. It's been 171 years, and if I do the math correctly, it's 1947, which since the city was incorporated, and we have never have done anything for the French-Canadian population that came through to this country over the course of the last 171 years. So today is our day. So as many of you know, I have recently come and become a bit of not an expert, but
I don't come from Lawrence, so I don't know.
World War I. 100 years ago this year was the ending of World War I. It's called, as many of you know, Armistice Day. And our city, the city of Lawrence, lost 183 men in that war. Many of those men, about 44 of them, have some sort of relationship with Canada, mostly from Quebec. What I would like to do is, I'm going to just make mention that there's an old Egyptian proverb. And the Egyptian proverb goes as this: to speak the name of the dead is to make them live again. So if it's okay with you, I have two sets of names that I'd like to read off for you. The first set of names are those Laurentians who went to fight for the Canadian Expeditionary Force, and they died during that war. Stephen Arsenault, William Arsenault, Alfred and Thomas Berry, they were brothers, Alfred Belanger, Joseph Bradley, Joseph Chason, John Cranston, Joseph Damphouse, Joseph Danhausen, James Diamond, Joseph Fournier, Jerry Gaudet, Walter Goodman, Arthur Hadfield, Alfred Hewitt, Felix Lynch, Fred Morgan, Richard Thomas Murphy, Andrew O'Day, and George Thompson Oliver, Efiche Paradis, James Stevenson, John Welsh, and Alexander White.
I got one already.
The next set of names I'm about to mention are those soldiers, again, from our city, from Lawrence, who died in the American Expeditionary Force, and they, mostly from Quebec, but they have a connection to Canada. John Berube, Arthur Champagne, John Baptiste Chenard, Omar Gagnon, John Doucette, George Willis Druin, Wilfrid Filion, Jean Fredette, Jules Albert, Joseph Lachance, George La Rochelle, Joseph Leclerc, Henry Morris Mann, Frederick Willett, John Willett, Wilfred Thibodeau, Alphonse Valcourt, Leon Valcourt, and Arthur Andre. I think it's important at this time just to remember that we had a number of individuals who hail from this part of the world that fought for liberty and justice. And thank you so much for your attentiveness as I read off those names.
What are those names?
Today we were expecting Mayor Rivera to be here. The mayor's been nothing but a great supporter. Unfortunately, some personal things have come up during this day that were unexpected. And so he's unable to make it with us today. But I will ask my former colleague, Councillor Eileen Burnell, who's the Chief of Staff, if she wouldn't mind coming forward and saying a few words.
Is this Marie Franca?
No.
Can you help out a little bit? Mr. Elwood, would you please come forward for one moment, please, sir? Thank you very much.
On behalf of Mayor Dan Rivera, I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate this French-Canadian Day. It is the first official one we've done in Lawrence, which does seem unusual. We have such a large population and we've been here for so many years, but we're glad the Council of Plan took that initiative and got this rolling. And it is my sincere honor to be able to present this on his behalf today. I'm going to present you the proclamation of the city that reads, "Be it known that I, Daniel Rivera, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, and on behalf of the residents of the City of Lawrence, Massachusetts, by and through this proclamation, hereby recognize and honor St. Jean-Baptiste Day, and hereby state as follows. Whereas since the earliest days, many sons and daughters of Quebec departed their homes in search of liberty and a better future, and whereas in the 1840s, French Canadians migrated to the United States in the City of Lawrence in pursuit of political and economic freedom, and whereas French Canadians played an instrumental role in building the infrastructure of the City of Lawrence through the construction of the city's mill structures, and whereas St. Jean-Baptiste Day celebrations began in 1834 and was recognized as a national holiday in Quebec in 1977, and whereas French Canadians have enriched our city and culture with their values and traditions, and whereas the City of Lawrence and Quebec are forever united and share history, values, and goals for our future. Now, therefore, I, Daniel Rivera, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, officially recognize St. Jean-Baptiste Day, and furthermore, I salute the many contributions of the people of French Canadian heritage that have made to the culture and prosperity of the City of Lawrence, Massachusetts, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and set my hand and affix the seal of the City of Lawrence this 24th day of June in the year of our Lord, 2018. On behalf of Mayor Rivera, I welcome you here to our city, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Brunel. I would next like to introduce, and by the way, we only had 50 of these programs we made out. We ran out of these things because we didn't expect this many people to show up. So thank you all for being here. This is an amazing turnout for this event. I'd like to introduce Mr. Jim Beauchesne. Jim is a Visitor Services Director at Lawrence Heritage State Park. He holds an MA in Public History from Northeastern University. He graduated from Merrimack College in 1978, from Lawrence Central Catholic High School in 1974, and from St. Anne's Grammar School in 1970. He is a French Canadian on both sides, the son of the late Henry Armand Beauchesne and Annette Dubois Beauchesne of Methuen. Welcome, Jim.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs.
Bonjour.
Don't worry, that's about all the French I'm going to hit you with today. I'm really happy to be invited here to talk about this. I've been studying French-Canadian history for a while, and of course working at Lawrence Heritage State Park, so this is where the two converge, French-Canadian history in Lawrence. But I'm going to go back a ways to do this, and first of all, have been granted, I think, 5 minutes by Mark to do this, and I guess he doesn't know historians very well. I can't do anything in 5 minutes, particularly a history that goes back over 400 years, because I am going to go back to the beginning. Now, here in New England, we have some friends who were descended from original English settlers. We fondly call them Yankees, and some of them like to point out that their ancestors arrived on the Mayflower. Well, I'm happy to report that some of our ancestors arrived before the Mayflower. Okay, the first permanent French settlement in North America was what was called Acadia in what is today Nova Scotia in 1604, 3 years before Jamestown in Virginia, and then the settlement of Quebec City in 1608, which is 12 years before the Mayflower. So we've been here a long time. Going to run through some history here. The French settlement in North America was, of course, called New France and remained so for about 150 years. Although there were some conflicts there, and certainly between the Protestant English and the Catholic French, there was a lot of conflict during those years. One of the wars resulted in the cession of the maritime provinces to the British in 1715, I believe. Ask my Acadian friends if I got that right. So the Acadians were first to become English subjects under British rule, which continued for a few decades until, in the run-up to the 7 Years' War, or what we call the French and Indian War, the British infamously expelled the Acadians from Acadia in what we call the Great Expulsion, or Le Grand Dérangement. Many of them wound their way to Louisiana, becoming the Cajuns. But many also escaped the British roundup, hiding in the hinterlands, and thereby creating a permanent French presence in the maritime provinces of Canada. Now, back in Quebec, things were going okay until, again, the 7 Years' War, and in 1759, the British defeated the French on the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec City, what we call the Conquest, and from then on, Canada was British territory. The British allowed, or rather the French allowed the British to take Canada so that they could keep the island of Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, which was a very wealthy sugar-producing colony, whereas Canada was derided by the French philosophe Voltaire as, quote, a few acres of snow. But you didn't know how good snow was when you put maple syrup on it. So, the French didn't just take it lying down. There was a rebellion in the late 1830s called the Patriot Rebellion, which unfortunately the British snuffed out pretty easily. And some of the rebels were forced to flee into New England, particularly Vermont, just across the border, becoming the first, or some of the first French immigrants to New England. But the immigration begins in earnest during the Civil War, when the economy and the whole society of America is turned upside down, and the mills in places like Lawrence are struggling to get enough workers. And they begin to recruit up in Quebec, where the French Canadians are mostly poor.